Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HMP. Time to continue our spring cleaning as this week we cover Oscar-winning film Poor Things. I'm your host, Adam Porters, and joining me today, be glad this is an audio-only podcast because he's doing this whole show naked. Please welcome back the Hartford Helly and Sweet Sean Zakovacs for the internet.
You ain't that lucky, friend.
No, our audience isn't that lucky. I got all of them going up on me up in here. You know what I'm saying? I'm fine with it. Today we're talking about Poor Things. The Oscar. Was it only one Oscar? I didn't watch the Oscars as we do these shows.
I never watch the Oscars ever unless I'm part of it.
We've done the show on Sundays for so many years now. At this point, there was a point where we would be recording the show, and I would actually have on mute the Oscars on the television in the background so I could just watch as we were doing it. Too distracting. Can't do that anymore. But I stopped watching, so I don't really know who won all the things. I know Emma Stone won for Best Actress here, which is great. And we'll talk about that performance and everything. But maybe it won some other things. Well, maybe I'll find out before we get to how things start going.
I'm looking it up.
But before we get to our review of Poor Things, we do have to say Bruce Leslie's out this week. It's okay. We still love him. He's out there. Bruce, are you listening? Wave to the camera. No, he's not.
He's
there.
not listening. He's not.
No, he doesn't listen to the regular show, much less the ones he's not on.
I know. Even no matter how many times we ask him, hey, maybe you should check that out and
listen to the program.
Get your performance a little bit. Nope. Perfect in every way.
Well, we got to say thank you to the folks that support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. On the Dinger Zone this week, we talk a little bit, and you're going to hear a lot of it on this program, about film analysis, because there's a lot of analyzing that's going to be going on in this episode, because there's things to be analyzed. You like how I used all those words?
It won 4 Oscars, sir.
Well, I knew it probably won at least 2 or 3, but 4, that's good. Production design, I would imagine.
Yes, makeup and hair. Emma Stone won. Costume design won.
Costume might make sense.
Yeah, and then it was nominated for score, best picture, directing, and Mark Ruffalo was up for an Oscar and didn't win. There's a bunch. Like, they were up for a lot.
Good stuff. So yeah, but for whatever thing, and I'd seen a Yorgos film or two previously, but just didn't get out to see this one in theaters and stuff. But I will say this: I'm probably glad I didn't see it in theaters.
Yeah,
this would be one that's just weird, seen in the company of other people, where it's just like, all right, so we're all sitting and watching this together, aren't we?
I'm uncomfortable.
Strange and weird.
I am uncomfortable.
A little bit odd. So probably the best thing to do.
Sitting in this little independent theater with a bunch of like-minded older folk.
And those in the theater that you saw it in was going to be small, so you were going to be near closer to those people than you would probably be further away for sure.
Absolutely.
So before we do that, so go over to patreon.com/HMP. Get all that stuff. Help support this here program. We really appreciate that. And if you can't do that, for heaven's sake, just drop on down to the iTunes. Give us a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger. Spotify's out there as well. Tell your mama, tell your friends, share the show with a friend. That is the biggest and best way that you can help this show grow, is just to share with people that would listen to it as well. You got some nerdy friends out there that would like this bullcrap just as much as you do. Just toss it their way, man. We really appreciate that, and we love all you guys. Patreon.com/HMP. And hey, drop us an email when you do that. hearmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Did somebody hit you in the mouth and bring you over here? Let us know. We'd like to know that. Let's get into it. Here's the IMDb plot line for Poor Things. As we all know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. An account of the fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back to life by the brilliant and unorthodox scientist, Dr. Godwin Baxter. This is written by Tony McNamara, did a lot of TV, also wrote The Favorite and Cruella from a couple years ago, that live-action one with Emma Stone as well. From the novel by Alistair Gray, who died in 2019. He wrote a couple of TV episodes in the 70s. This, of course, was his novel. Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who directed The Favorite, The Lobster, and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Not exactly the most traditional
fun party movies, all of them.
Yeah, they're a blast. These guys, this guy, and I think this movie. I don't know if you've seen the other one yet, but I think this movie would be a good. I say good with quotes, scare quotes on it for sure, but a good double feature with Beau is Afraid.
Oh my God, man! No way.
Yeah,
no way.
Both of these together is just
existential dread in both of those movies. Get out of here.
You will find the closest cliff and just drive right off of it. Thelma and Louise yourself right on into the great beyond because you'll be done with it at that point.
I've got to say too about The Lobster. The Lobster is one of those movies where it's like somebody said to themselves, "What if we made a comedy that wasn't funny?"
Yeah. That is one thing that I found surprising about this movie is that there was definitely a lot of very dark comedy and stuff in it as well.
This one, the comedy actually works in it. Yes.
All right. Well, let me sell everybody on this modern day sexual Frankenstein because this sucker's got everything.
Wasn't that your nickname?
Yeah, it was. They just cobbled me together. The first thing I noticed about this movie, and I'm sure everyone else was the same, you guessed it, it's that 1.66 to 1 aspect ratio. You knew I was going to talk about it. Come on. We got your boy Yorgos Lanthimos, who you know from a buttload of things, and this is what he does. We got really wide angles, and when I say really wide angles, I mean really wide. We got what I call the snoot lens, natural lighting, set design from a Stanley Kubrick acid nightmare, constant score filled to the brim. To the absolute brim with sour notes, a constant feeling of something isn't right. We've got Emma Stone in her Oscar-winning role that if you wrote it down on paper, well, we'll talk about it. Willem Dafoe gives one of his most brave performances ever by refusing to wear makeup for this film. A true thespian, says I. We've got Paul F. Tompkins. Let me check my notes. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo. And you know what?
The handsome version of Paul F. Tompkins.
And guess what? I didn't actually hate him as an actor in this movie. Ooh. We got Rami Youssef, who I don't know from anything, but it feels like I do. I think that's a good actor when they can pull that one off. Andy McDowell's kid shows up. We got a stark black and white film photography, Technicolor turned to 11, bridge jumping, body jumping, sea sailing, hair growing, a chicken pig, a goat shows up, fun with France, giving your money to the poor. And oh yeah, of course, there is this thing that, like my boy Troy McClure once said, and now what you've all come here for, hardcore nudity. This movie has everything.
Yeah, it really does. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with more sex in it that's less sexy than this movie. It's like the least sexy sex that's ever been filmed.
Now, I have a couple things. So I knew of this movie, of course, and stuff, and I'd heard of the nudity and things of that nature and stuff. But I think somebody may have oversold it a little bit, which is okay, because it was just like, oh, like they're like she is naked in 3/4 of this movie. Not really. There's a good amount of nudity. Do not get me wrong, but like it never feels like she's not just like walking around naked the whole time. Like that's what's going on.
You know what it is? It's that thing. It's the difference between the camera in Iron Man 2 with Scarlett Johansson and anything after that movie, because clearly Scarlett Johansson had a conversation with the higher ups at Marvel, like, hey, enough with the lingering camera. Enough.
We're just giving the people what they want, to be fair.
And that's what this feels like to me. It feels like, let's try to have the least sexy sex we can possibly put in a movie for like, let's say half of the movie. And boy, do they deliver on that.
Yeah. And now I think also one of the ways that you kind of get across and be able to jump over that hurdle without having to go down the, like, you know, everything is sexy route is the fact that, you know, we've had this. So this movie opens up with Emma Stone's character, who we're not sure of this person's name, is jumping off of a bridge. We've come to find out later that this woman was pregnant with child, and Willem Dafoe's character, Dr. Baxter, took this woman who is nearly dead, not quite dead, pretty darn close.
Mostly dead.
Mostly dead. Took her and then brought her back to his lab, took the brain from the baby and put it in this woman's head and reanimated her. That's the basis for this movie, everybody.
Normal old movie. We've seen it a million times.
But have we seen it in black and white and Technicolor?
Finally, somebody has answered the question, what if we made a movie that's Barbie and RoboCop?
Finally. She wakes up, scans everybody in the room.
I don't know your feelings on this movie or on the filmmakers of this movie, Adam, but like I have never been a huge fan of his movies because this is like I don't think watching movies should feel like a job.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that watching a movie should transport you. It should be something that like you are when movies are at their best, you forget that you're watching a movie. Like that's how deep into a film you can get. It hasn't happened to me for years and years, but it does happen from time to time. And this movie is close to that after a while, where everything is so fantastical and everything at the beginning of the movie, they kind of pull off a trick that I think is very hard to do, which is that at the beginning of this movie, you are because you're seeing it through Emma Stone's character's eyes, where things are hard to figure out. You don't really know what you're watching at first because everything is so stunted and weird, and you know all the different camera lenses that he's using. He's using the widest lens you can possibly use on a motion picture camera
without actually going full fisheye, but it's as close as you can get. Go to fisheye and then dial it back by 2 degrees.
Right. And then, I mean, you know, he's a very good filmmaker. I understand that his movies are one of one, and I think that he should keep making these movies because he has a very unique voice. It's just not my jam until this movie. Like this movie, there's something transformative about this movie to me, where you're seeing something that should never work. You know, this should not work. You have to have the surest hand of filmmaking in order to pull this off, because it could be dopey. The performance could be like over the top and off-putting and jarring. The fact that you're using miniatures and you're using painted backdrops and you're like everything is on a stage on this in this movie, with one or two exceptions. I couldn't even tell, which is also a complete triumph of this movie, is I don't even know if they're outside sometimes. Like this is what makes this thing so interesting. And it feels like a fairy tale. It feels like what Tim Burton tries to pull off a lot and just can't do it anymore.
Right.
That's what this movie feels like to me.
Well, it's very auteurish. This guy, like when you see his stuff, you know what it's this, because like this, as far as like from a visual standpoint, even though that they take place in somewhat similar times, but disparate times to be sure. But like with this and The Favorite, they have very similar cinematic language to them.
I've never seen The Favorite.
It's good. It's good. It's another one of those where he like, I think that's where he really started with his wide angle lenses and stuff. Cause there's some stuff in there. You're like, what in the hell is this? Especially for the time period and stuff. So when you see like a carriage come by and then like kind of get distorted towards the lens, you're like, what am I watching? What is this film? But then, you know, when Olivia Colman gives a fantastic performance and wins an Oscar, you're like, yeah, it all makes sense.
I need to see it for her alone because I love her.
She's so like that was one of those like when they announced that you're just like, well, I know she's winning that because dang.
I had given him 2 chances with Killing of a Sacred Deer and then The Lobster, and I was like, okay, I'm out. Like this filmmaker is just not for me, which happens, you know, and like. I understand that he has fans. I'm not gonna pee on their parade because people like his stuff. It's just not my jam. And then, you know, I kept hearing from people from Bruce. I kept hearing, hey, the production design in this movie is so unique. You need to see this movie. And I'm really, really glad I did, because what it feels like to me, it feels like grown up Wes Anderson.
You
You know,
know,
where
I am so happy you said that because I had similar thoughts watching this. Yeah.
it's there's a lot more money, there's a lot more chances being taken. Like if this movie doesn't work, think about this for a second. The dance scene on the ship
Mm-hmm.
where Emma Stone's character and Mark Ruffalo's character are dancing. They're conveying information to you about like this is the state of their relationship currently. And on top of that, it's so goofy and weird,
Mm-hmm.
but it all works. You you have to know exactly what you're doing in order to pull off that scene. If you go a step in either direction the wrong way, that scene doesn't work at all. It's one of those scenes where it's kind of surprising, where you're learning emotions, you're learning where they're currently at in their own lives, how they're reacting to each other, all through their dance performance. It's just amazing. And they also pull off that weird thing in this movie twice. One is I did not realize that Emma Stone's character went from that staccato, like baby toddler speak,
It's so
to
good.
where she's full grown adult. I did not notice that transition until like we were like in the third act, and I was like, "Oh, holy crap!"
She knows how to speak well now. Oh, that's
Yes.
interesting. Yeah.
It didn't even I didn't even notice that transition happen. That's how well done this movie is.
It's an interesting way that they kind of convey that stuff and the passage of time within this movie. Like you said, with her pattern of speech and just kind of coming online, as it were, and the odd instance of talking about her hair and how her
Yes.
hair grows and stuff like that. And then you can, adjust how long you've been in the movie by looking at the length of the hair. I thought that was, between those two things, really interesting to see how time passes. And only until we get to the real end that we see even Ruffalo's character start to, actually age.
Right. And I think that I know that you're not a huge Ruffalo fan. I know that you're not.
No.
I have loved Ruffalo ever since well, we don't need to talk about that on air. But he is great in this movie. He is such a little vindictive, horrible little creep of a man.
Mhm.
And like, especially when we get to the third act, he puts a picture in the paper of Emma Stone's character, and the ex-husband shows up, and his performance of like just being like the second toady, like behind him,
Oh,
like pointing,
yeah.
it's so good. His performance is so unbelievably good, man. And I laughed so hard when he's taking a backseat to this guy we've never met before in the movie, and he's like, "Yeah, what he said," like it's just so good.
And that is one of the reasons that I liked him in this. Well, number one, it feels like he's stepping out and doing more work than he normally does within these roles. I got a little quote that I'm going to read in just a second, but like he was, it felt like Mark Ruffalo showed up for work. Sometimes It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like he showed up and just decided to play Mark Ruffalo today, and I don't need that. I don't need you to play Mark Ruffalo. Play somebody else. We know who you are.
Sometimes you're shooting Ocean's 12, man. You know what I mean?
Okay. But like he is the same in like, what was the one about the newspaper that did all the reporting, or Spotlight. He's the same in Spotlight as he is in, that one about the divorced kids. I don't know.
Oh, the kids are all right.
Yeah, it's all the same crap. He's playing the same role in a lot of these things, and it's only a couple of times here and there that he brought up. But I like what he's doing here. I like the mustache, and I feel like this is a bad thing, but whatever. I feel like this is Mark Ruffalo leaning into Mark Ruffalo. I don't know why, but I feel like Mark Ruffalo is probably a scummy guy in real life. I don't know why.
You're wrong. You are wrong.
Maybe.
You are 100% wrong.
I feel like he's a jerk, though. I don't know why. But
I don't know why either, but you're wrong.
But him leaning into this just kind of like weird, over the top performance and stuff. But let me read what he said. So Mark Ruffalo on the role of taking Duncan Wedderburn. He says, quote, I'm 55 now, and you start to think, okay, I'm on the downside hill in a way. There's a limitation to how long it's going to last and how long my body's going to hold up. And honestly, I'm getting a little bored of myself as Mark Ruffalo. Me too, Mark Ruffalo. Me too. I was trying to take the ship as close to the reef as I possibly could without actually running aground. There's a daringness in this that I normally wouldn't have, but I was like, F it. If I go down in a flaming disastrous performance, I really don't give a crap. But I think that this is the best time I've ever had on a movie, Ruffalo continued. To play that character and do all the physical comedy, the language, and the arc that he made, it was so crazy and exciting. It's one foot on a banana peel and the other in the grave.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've been touting the whole time here, is that you have to be so sure as the director of this movie. You have to know exactly what it is that you're looking for, because if you're guessing, you're going to be wrong. And I think that we haven't even started. We haven't really discussed the production design of this movie yet, which we will get to. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is earlier when I said that they pulled the trick off twice, one with Emma Stone with her vocal patterns. The second time that I was completely hornswoggled was when they kept going back and forth between black and white and color. And I didn't catch it when they started going back to black and white and then back to color again, like, because it happens later in the movie. And I was like, I was like, wait a minute, that last scene was in black and white and I didn't even notice. That is how sure-handed this movie is.
Yeah, it says I'm going in this direction, and the nice part is that it doesn't sit there and force the audience to follow along and stuff. It just goes, no, you're gonna have to live with this. We're not gonna spell everything out to you left, right, and center.
Yeah, but they also there is literally no hand-holding in this movie. They expect you to know the themes. They expect you to understand things that are unspoken the entire movie, like the fact that clearly Willem Dafoe's character has been so broken by his father, and he is trying to fight that with his kids, quote unquote, where he's trying to give them a better life and break that cycle. You can see that in the movie. Like, there's a lot of different aspects.
But the overall theme of it as well is that, many times you cannot break these cycles. These cycles are bound to happen, and they're going to continue on, as as the ending of this movie shows us, is that a lot of these traumas and stuff can be generational, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that again, I can see someone watching this movie and hating it. Like, this movie is not for everyone, but this movie was totally for me. And it's fun and it's funny and it's weird and choices that are made. You're just like, what? Like the octopus light in her bedroom. There's the overhead light in her bedroom that is an octopus that is holding all eight legs, or holding a light. and everything else about her bedroom is soft and has no edges to it, because he doesn't want her to get hurt by her own design, because he knows that she very clearly could hurt herself. So everything's a little padded, everything's a little curved. And I was like, wow, that is some really like, someone really thought about this in order to make this movie. And there's two different production designers. One is the person who, because I looked it up, one is the person who came up with the ideas for what these things should be, and the other one is the facilitator, the reality of what the other person is creating. And you kind of need that for a movie like this, because as fantastical as elements of this movie are, you need someone who has a foot on the ground, so that they're like, well, that is an amazing idea, but that is not something we can do. But how about this instead? Like, that kind of thing. So you got to figure that there's probably so much prep in this movie with the production designer, the production design team, and the director, talking about needs and wants and how to shoot things and what they're looking for and atmosphere and just stuff like that, where when they're in Paris, that feels like a storybook. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you literally, it feels like you're watching a storybook. They're always on that corner, like for the entire, like, oh, well, there's the brothel, but also there's the bakery. There's a church there.
And you
All
sit here always.
all the trees are red for some reason. Like it's just really great ideas and thoughts, and it kind of hurt my head a little bit thinking about all of the time that must have been spent by the people who are like the crew people who are putting this together,
Mm.
because there is so many painted backdrops in this movie. You've got to figure that you've probably got a team of 10 working on that, probably.
Mm.
And I know this was shot in Hungary, so there's not a ton of like you're not running into like LA rates or something like that. It's going to be a lot.
Oh,
It's
you
going to
don't know
cost you
about
a
the
lot less.
strong Hungarian unions, man. You don't like they are ball busters.
But even with that being said, I mean, if you're hiring, usually, let's say you hire 100 people on an art direction team, like overall, there's probably about 100 people. For this movie, it's probably double that, maybe even triple that, in order to make this thing work. And that is where all your money is in the production design of this movie, and it's totally worth it. You could watch this with the sound off and still enjoy what you're watching, even though you wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, visually, there's just so much stuff going on, and how he shoots things, and like I said, every now and then you get like the wild super wide angle or snoot lens and stuff like that, and you're like, it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
To be sure, you're like, okay, what am I doing now? And so much of the movie itself is an interpretation. It's just like, what do you think's going on right now? Because there's many ways to read a lot of this stuff, thematically and like metaphorically and stuff like that. So that to me is also kind of part of the fun of it, is just and all of his movies, to be quite frank, if you look back and go, what the hell is he trying to say here? And it's never truly clear in my book. In all of his movies, it's like, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but I like that because it makes people talk, it makes people think, it makes people question your movies and stuff, and that it leads to better discourse, as far as I can tell.
I don't really understand the pinpoint camera, because it's not someone's point of view.
You're
It's not a
right,
point
because
of view.
sometimes you want to, like, because you would think that sometimes with how they do stuff, and like they will cut to a shot that makes you think that it's supposed to be that POV, but like when you look at the shot, it's clearly not.
No.
So I don't know. It's an interesting choice, and I like that he makes it, because it's, who else is doing that?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Look, as I've said many, many times on this show, look, I like originality. I like when people take big, bold chances, and he's certainly doing that in this, and he's just right a lot. Like 90% of the time, he was correct in what he chose.
I have a funny little thing here. So it turns out Mark Ruffalo had a lot of doubts about his performance during the shoot. He often joked that his friend Oscar Isaac, who was filming on a nearby soundstage, was going to be called in to replace him. One day, Willem Dafoe pranked Ruffalo by taking him to a room where Isaac, who was in on the joke, was waiting. Isaac and Dafoe who informed Ruffalo that he was fired and indeed being replaced by Isaac.
That's great.
Hey, we got some bad news. Turns out this guy, people really like him. We're going to bring him on into this. Really great Willem Dafoe performance in this. Yeah. A more subtle one for him, but like, you need that sometimes, because Lord knows he's screaming to the hills on other occasions, and it's fine, but
he can eat scenery when he wants to, that's for sure.
But he dials it back here. He's given a very kind of John Hurt-esque performance, if you will.
Oh, that's neat. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good one for one there, man. Like he's kind of it's kind of in what he, man, I hate talking like this. It's what he's not saying, which is where his performance is.
Yeah.
He's not screaming at people. He seems to have a ton of patience with her specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is incredibly his performance is incredibly interesting because he has no patience for just about anything except her. Like
It,
he doesn't even like the other girl whose brain he changed for a baby.
yeah.
Like he only likes Emma Stone's character.
He has a dark kindness to him.
Yes.
Where it's like like he is metaphorically and for practical purposes to a degree a monster. Like he
Yeah.
has been experimented on from his father, and that is one of it's hilarious but sad and frightening all at the same time of hearing all of the abuses that his father did to him,
Man.
of that made him the grotesque monster that we see before us today and stuff, and how he uses that bit of information then to not take away from his life, but add to it, which is an
Yeah.
amazing thing. He just goes like, no, this was all for good. All of the things that, that were done to me and all of the things that were like, it was for a purpose. We found out that, no, you need these enzymes in your mouth to be able to properly digest food. Otherwise, you have to hook up tubes to your body and then you burp out a bubble at the end of each meal.
Right. Right.
What? Okay.
Let me ask you, if this was a lesser movie, because I thought that this is where they were going with it. Actually, I wasn't sure, but I was like, please don't do the thing that I think you're going to do. The end of the movie, when she throws the cocktail in his face and knocks him out, the general.
Mhm.
He shoots himself in the foot. And she's like, we're going to experiment on him. And then you hear the goat bray. And I was like, at first I was like, oh, so they're going to replace his brain with the brain of a goat, which is a great idea.
Mhm.
And then they kind of like edit to a close up of Willem Dafoe. And I was like, oh no, don't tell me you're going to put Dafoe's brain in that dude's
I
body.
thought we were going down that route as well.
And I was going to, it wasn't going to ruin the movie for me, but I was like, this movie is less than if that's what you do. And the fact that they held off and they actually put the go brain in the general's body, I was like, there you go. That's the movie you are. That is correct.
Yeah, it's there's just so many weird weird moments in this entire movie. Let's talk about the lady of the hour here, Emma Stone, who's been a great actress for a really long time.
She has.
And also one of those people that when you look at the majority of things that she's in, even if those things aren't particularly great, she's usually pretty good in those things.
Yeah, agreed.
And I was happy to see with what she brought here, and like you said, the actual evolution of this character. And again, we're not all supposed to take things. And there's many quotes on the internet talking about the director and how him and her. She's a producer of this as well, so she had a bit of say in things as well. How this isn't literal. This isn't a literal movie, everybody. None of these things they're not really, like, we're not talking about putting like an actual baby brain inside of an actual, this isn't a documentary. This is like, these are odd, 21st century, weird, sexy Grimm's fairy tales that are all just kind of jacked up. Like that's the weird world that we're living in. It's like if you went into like just in like the never ending story was even odder. That's what this movie feels like to me. It's just like, what wild planet are we on that looks like ours?
So I am looking up her filmography right now, and I guess I didn't realize this. Her first role, they tried to reboot the Partridge Family, the new Partridge Family, and she played Lori Partridge on that reboot. It's just a one-off. It was a TV movie. They wanted to see how it would do. Clearly, not well.
So gangbusters,
but. She goes, she's doing like walk-ons on the TV series Medium, and then she shows up. Man, it's so hard to believe that 15 years ago, she's doing one-offs on the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. Like that's where she is.
Really?
And now she's here because 2007 she's in Superbad. And that's where I first noticed her. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that was probably like the first
her.
like real big thing I would think for her, kind of jumping off.
Right. And she's in all of those movies that are kind of like left of center of Superbad. So like she's in The Rocker and The House Bunny and Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. And she's in all of those, like Marmaduke and like all of these movies
When
where
was
it's like
Easy A? Because I think that was like her big, like, you're starring in this bad boy. You're number one on the call sheet.
well, that's 2010, but the year before is the movie where I'm like, oh, she's not a flash in the pan, because she's in Zombieland and she is awesome in that first
Oh,
Zombieland movie.
right. I forgot about that one. That one was before. Okay, cool.
Yeah, she's really good in that. And then she's in Easy A, which is like, I agree with you. I think that's a really good movie. And like, she keeps going back and forth, and they kind of don't know what to do with her, and then she ends up in Amazing Spider-Man, and like, there's like a lot of there's a lot of weird choices here. And it kind of feels to me like after Birdman, she she's like, I'm going to get control of my own career from this point forward, and I'm not going to let like whatever jobs come up going to be the thing that drives me. I'm going to create my own way. And from that point forward, she's in like La La Land and Battle of the Sexes, and
She was
well,
great in that movie. That if you haven't seen Battle of the Sexes, everybody do check that movie out. Real good underseen movie about tennis.
and she does make some mistakes. She's in Zombieland 2.
Hey,
Double
listen,
Tap,
you got to get that paycheck when it comes.
and that is totally what happened there. You know that it is. And in the same year, she's in Poor Things and The Curse. I mean, she's doing okay.
She's doing all right, that girl.
Yeah.
Got a couple other fun ones here. Director Yorgos Lanthimos wanted Mark Ruffalo to have a bird-like silhouette, specifically that of a puffed-up penguin. The costume designers created a puffy chest piece for Ruffalo to wear, but found it was too distracting.
That's amazing.
Instead, they exaggerated his shape with large shoulder pads and a corset. I did like him wearing the corset, like when they get to the little after thing and he's sitting there.
Yes.
It's a really well written character. I kind of love. He's just this smarmy guy who swings in and goes, I'm gonna steal this guy's lady, but I'm only gonna steal her for a little bit of fun stuff. But he's not the Casanova that he like pawns himself off to be. I don't think. I think he plays like he's all this because he becomes very insecure super quick, and it's just like, no, you need to marry me. We need to do this. And I love her just absent-mindedness of everything because she hasn't grown up in a world. So she's just like, oh, well, I've already been betrothed to this guy over here. I just came out with you for, a little bit of fun. And he's like, what's going on here? It's so weird and bizarre. And like, I like it. I like her weird character of just like going around and kind of just discovering life as it goes on and just clearly developing as things go. And then, like you said, by the end, is almost pretty much just a full realized person. Just kind of taking the entire movie to discover not only who she is, but what the world is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, by the time you're done with this movie, by the time that the credits roll on this movie, it is such a satisfying ending too, which movies like this sometimes don't have, like I'm thinking about like Welcome to the Dollhouse kind of movies where you're like, we just spent 2 hours with these people and it's just like the day is just continuing and they ended the movie. Whereas with this movie, like the ending is so satisfying and you feel like I this was wonderful. I don't want to see anything from this world again ever. It's great.
Yeah, this is a couple of movies that the director gave his crew and everything to kind of get the idea of what we were looking for was The Ship Sails On from 1983. I haven't seen that one.
Don't know that one.
But Belle de Jour from 1967, so a little Buñuel, and Young Frankenstein.
Wow.
Young but so much of this felt like a lot of Young Frankenstein, not only just your black and white photography and stuff like that, but it felt like that plus, again, with your Elephant Man, that Mel Brooks kind of connection and all. Yeah. It felt very much kind of that same sort of that feeling. I'm sure same time period and everything for both of those films. Yeah, or near-ish.
Near.
I don't really know. I'm not a historian. I know there's a lot of people out there that thought I was, but that's not true. No, sir. But I was, Emma Stone went all in. She went all in on what could be and what I was scared of, to be quite frank. And I'm so glad that the character itself evolves over the time, because at first, what it feels like is that we're taking advantage of a mentally ill person.
Yes.
So,
and they do bring it up. They bring it up several times at the beginning of the movie that they even throw down the old R word.
Well, yeah,
at the beginning of this, which they would have done.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, while she's on the ship with him, he even says that she may be mentally deficient. Like, like we're still not all the way there yet. It is at times this movie feels so claustrophobic, which it's supposed to. At times this movie feels like you have no idea what's going on or why they're making the choices they're making, which is exactly the way that's supposed to be. And for that reason alone, they pull off that trick of, by the end of this movie, you understand all of it. You understand every bit of this movie if you're paying attention. And luckily I was.
So what do you think about like the kind of, because ultimately it feels like this is very much a love letter to Frankenstein.
Yeah.
This entire thing. I mean, down to, I don't know, I didn't know this, but I looked into apparently Mary Shelley's maiden name, Godwin.
Oh, that makes sense.
So there's a lot of tiny little drops in this thing that are just like, hey, boom, there you go. Here's another little bit of that we like in this, and it's just so unique. Like I think, like we continue to say, is like it's so touristic that when you watch this, there's nobody else that could have shot any of this stuff.
No,
because it's too weird, it's too bizarre, and like. Oh, let me. Who is? I don't know if she was an actual person, but the lady that ran the brothel. What a great little weird character actor lady. She
looks like a Pixar character in real life.
Oh, and so like an actual, just her real life. So not the. Not a real life version of that. No, I mean the character
itself. Like when she shows up, I was like, man, she looks like she was drawn by Pixar when she shows up in this movie.
It's like a Pixar meets a call lady from John Wick.
Yes.
So one of the ladies that's operating that switchboard with all of her tats and stuff, but she's operating a brothel, but she's drawn by Pixar.
Yeah.
But again, that was one of those neat things of like her realizing like how kind of the world works, how she can use herself to, further her situation. And of course, at these times and stuff, if you are, a poor nothing in France and everything, this lady is correct. The fastest way to get yourself $1 and to continue on is to, get into this prostitution thing. Super simple and everything. But I loved her reaction to everything. Like the first one was just like, all right, that's fine. But eventually it was just like, you know what? I don't really have any connection with these guys. What if they just picked us as opposed to, or we picked out them?
I mean, what you're dancing around here is that she has no moral judgment on any of the decisions that she makes because she wasn't taught morality, really. She has to come up with her own version of what that is. And I think that that's what they're trying to convey during these scenes is like, when you see an out and you see a certain like, oh, this is the best way for me to move forward, and you don't have the morality dug into you from, your parents or from whomever, that makes perfect sense.
And the bargaining that she does with herself
during that time.
Yeah, she even makes the own bargaining stuff in her mind of like, hey, this is what I need to do for this sort of thing, and like, but that's also part of the interesting bit about the character is that like it all comes from a level of naivete.
Yes.
It's like she's never, and that's one of the things why I think you don't end up hating the character because she's never really scheming. She's not trying to do any of these things. She's just kind of flowing by the seat, just like seeing where that wind brings her. And that's because, like you said, at this point, all of a sudden she just goes, you know what? Maybe I ought to go with the guy. Because when she finds out that, she was somebody who killed herself and then the brain of her child was put into her brain, when she figures all this out and then realizes that this is, her ex-husband shows up going, hey, I missed you and everything. She just kind of goes with the wind and says, what am I going to do? And you know what? I just might as well go with this guy. Let's see what happens. And that's always kind of her reaction to stuff is like, let's just
Yeah.
see where things go. Let's figure stuff out. So much so that she gets inside of a trunk.
Yeah, early on.
That is
Totally forgot about the trunk.
That's a girl who's in for just about anything. It's like, all right, listen, sweetie, I'm gonna need you to get inside this trunk, and then we're gonna open it up later, and you're gonna be on a ship, huh? That's a trusting lady right there. Please get in the steamer trunk. It'll be fine. Again, part of the music. The music is so unsettling and weird and just like. I loved it because I hated it.
You know what it has the feel to? It has that same feel of that movie that came out on HBO during the pandemic that had Bradley Cooper in it, where he's in the circus.
I didn't see that one.
I can't remember what the name of that movie is, but that movie is not even remotely close to as good as this movie. Like what they were, and that's Del Toro, and it's still not nearly as great as this movie is.
Nightmare Alley, is that the one we're talking about?
Nightmare Alley, that's the one.
Yeah. I remember that we had a poster for that. It was a very, very fast theatrical run, that movie.
It was the pandemic. It makes sense.
Well, no, it was a little before that, but the people didn't go see it anyways. But it did come out at like the worst time for it and everything. Sound wise, I want to talk about sound and like one of those. And again, this is one of those things that the director kind of does that, like, you know, unless you're in a place that's, you know, really rocking this sound and everything, you won't notice nearly as much. There are some like wild during like specific dramatic moments throughout the movie. There are some wild subsonic bass hits that play that just kind of like really rattle the room that like in a regular TV you're not even gonna hear. Like it's just gonna like your TV just goes like, I don't even know what that is. But the subwoofer in my house goes and like there are some just like, it is midnight while I'm watching this. I had to turn the sub off, man, because I was just like, we are going to wake the dead on this one. But there's just something that you would not suspect in this movie that does not really have any action or anything in it. But like every now and then some like really just ominous bone shaking bass comes in and you're like, oh, so something bad's happening right now? Some ominous stuff's going on? Okay, cool. But good stuff. Well, before we get to our final review, we do have like it may be an impossibility, but we got to find out how this movie relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Everybody sit down. This is going to be a really long one.
Oh, I got to stretch. Hold on. There we go.
Hello, Mr. Stallone. This movie, Poor Things, was shot in Hungary, and you spoke Hungarian in the movie Fist, which is a huge deal to people in Hungary. That's your Stallone connection this week. Hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, Sweet Shawnsy from the internet.
Hey, let me tell you something right now. You know what we had with the Stallone connection when we started this thing? There's only one rule. It has to connect 1-to-1 with Stallone. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. We didn't. You know what we didn't say? You know what we've never said? Go back, check the archives, everybody. We never said how this connects 1-to-1 actor to Sylvester Stallone or director. We just said how this movie connects to Sylvester 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone. Those are statements.
I went through all of it, and there ain't nobody who worked on this movie who has worked with Sylvester Stallone.
Let's be honest. Is he welcome in Hungary at this point? Not after all he's done.
He is, because of the whole thing from Fist. Like I'm not kidding when I tell you the people of Hungary thought that was a very big deal, because Hungarian is a very hard, difficult language to master.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so when he nails it in Fist, the Hungarians went bananas.
There you go, Hungary. If you were listening to us in Hungary, hereamoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Please.
just want to see if we can pull somebody from the Hungarian community out here. Give us your best goulash recipe. All right, here at HMP, we have our own patented Robin rating system. We don't do letters or grades. We have our own stupid system that's based upon the Robins in comic books. You've never heard of that? There's 500 episodes. Go listen to them. Sean, where does Poor Things fall on the official Robin rating system for you?
This is not a movie I would suggest in mixed company. No. I think that there are vast swaths of people who will think that this movie sucks and hate it and make them feel dumb, and I get it. I love this movie, but I can only give it a Tim Drake because it requires so much of you to watch this movie
Mm-hmm.
that at times it does feel like work watching this movie instead of, enjoyment and entertainment, which is what movies and television is supposed to be.
You shouldn't be crying when you're entertained, not crying in fear. No, I don't want. No, make it stop. You don't need that. That's not the ideal cinematic experience. I think I'm the same, Tim Drake, with this one. You're right. It's not going to be one for everybody. I can see a lot of people hate because his stuff is very different. It's very different. Yeah. It's very strange. It's of a particular voice. And if you like it, you like it. But if you don't, boy, you won't. I will say, though, I will say that, yeah, this one is probably his most accessible film.
Yeah, I agree. Of everything that I've seen of his, this is the most accessible. And you know what? It ain't that accessible.
No, and it's not. It's not. And the Favorite's fairly accessible, but there's some gross stuff in it. So I think some people will be turned off a little bit by that. There's not as much. There's sex stuff in here.
There's gross stuff in this too.
Yeah, but it's weird, like sex stuff. It's not nearly as much as like
there's surgery. There's a ton of surgery in this thing.
Yeah, not like you gotta see The Favorite. There's some
okay.
What Olivia Colman's got going on, you don't got nothing to do with. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'll give it to you. But if those of you seen the movie, you're like, oh man, he know what he's talking about. No, sir. But it's great. I don't know how Emma Stone sat down with a script and thought, this is a great idea and I will win an Oscar for this. Because
I don't know either.
It's the most insane thing ever. This could not read well on paper.
But she saw it. I mean, she did see it.
Yeah. She was just like, okay, all right, this is what I'm gonna do, and had, no predilections on just going in and giving 100%. It's not. I don't think it's just the nudity. I think everybody's gonna in today's Hollywood, which is true, in today's Hollywood age, nudity has gone down dramatically with a lot of stuff because most of it's uncomfortable to watch on screen if we're honest. But it's gone down over the years. So actually having an A-list Hollywood star do a fairly decent amount of nudity in a film is rare.
Surprising.
Yeah, surprising and rare these days. But it's not done in, like we said, in kind of like an overly sexual manner or anything. And I think Adam Carolla was when I heard talk about this. It's like the reason that it kind of works like that is that she's not buxom. I think if she was a buxom gal, the movie goes a little bit more lecherous and stuff like that, gets into more of that like kind of the male gaze, if you will. I hate that phrase, but it's like, like dudes going, oh, this is why we're watching this. No, it does. It doesn't have to be, because that movie, that's a different movie. That's a distracting movie. This is not that movie. This is a movie that you're going. You don't like any of the decisions any of these people are making. You don't. There's no one to root for in this movie per se. You kind of root for her, but only in as much as just to get some sort of semblance of who she is, because she ain't of this earth, so to speak. She's a creation. She's that Frankenstein's monster walking around, but is far more sentient than that and just wants to partake in the pleasures of life. But worth going back to and watching again, I think at some point, just to do what you do with Yorgos Lanthimos films, is look back and go, what the hell is he trying to say here? What is this? I'm very scratching your brain here, just trying to figure it all out. But that's what I like about this, and that's why, like I said, it's not for everybody. If you watch the first 20 minate and you hate it, jump out.
Yeah, it's not going to get better for you.
No, it's only going to get worse, if anything. And but then again, I say that. But her performance, because the character itself evolves as things go.
True. Right, but I mean,
you feel better with it.
It's like whenever anyone says to me, "Oh, you've got to watch Buffy, the TV show," and I'm like, that has 6 seasons. There's no way I'm watching it. And I heard that the first season is awful, but you have to watch it anyway because it makes sense for the second season. And they go, yeah, but once you get through that first season, I'm like, no, that is not what I'm doing.
I heard that exact same thing. I watched that first season of Buffy, thought it was, it was fine, for what it was and everything. But then they're like, but I had gotten to the point where I was just like, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
He was like, bro, you should have given me season 2 for the jump. Maybe I would have, because the first season, like, it's fine, but it's nothing it didn't make me go like, boy, I got to see season 2 now. But apparently season 2 is when it kind of kicked into gear. Too little, too late, says I.
So what are we watching next week?
So next week, we're going to do what I lied about last week. Which is we're going to watch the first 3 episodes of Shogun on Hulu. So this is the new kind of I'm not sure exactly when the time period is and everything, but it's just it's an old martial arts action on Hulu. I hear it's good. I don't know too much about it, and I don't want to know too much before going in. All I've heard is just very cool things, and we are the age of some really cool like samurai stuff going on right now, and like in the world of video games and whatnot. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, so it's a genre that is kind of picking up yet again. So
I've seen the first episode. It's good.
So we will we'll be checking that kind of good stuff out next week. Sean, if there was a Star Wars television show starting at some point, what would happen then on this planet Earth?
They're coming out with a new one of those. It's called The
What?
Acolyte, and we are going to have a show called The Acolyte 30 Questions, where each week, whenever the fine folks over at Disney Plus drop a new episode, we will be watching it and reviewing it in the form of 30 questions.
Those fine people over there. We're going to see a whole bunch of Jedi on screen. We're going to see if what people have been asking for all these years is what they actually want when they're given it. I think
this is the last of its kind too. This is the last one from that chunk of we got to have a new Star Wars every year.
Yeah.
So, your mileage may vary on this thing.
But that's also some of the fun with the 30 questions is that like, you know, the shows can be good that like, and even shows like Obi-Wan had their moments. There were moments in those shows where you're just like, oh, there's a kernel of something in here, and then it all goes to poop. But
I was almost Star Wars had almost beaten me with that show. I hated it so much. It was so awful. But then came Andor, and I wasn't all the way back in. I'm trepidatious, but it's okay.
We're hopeful. That's all it is. Hopeful. We're hopeful. We want stuff to be good. We wanted to get back on track, and we think you can do that by not doing so bloody much of it. So pump the brakes a little bit. Give us some quality things. Let's get back to that. Make me want a Star Wars again, as opposed to going another Star Wars. Jesus, we don't need that either. You know. So we'll be doing that soon. So stay tuned to that for all of your 30 questions needs. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking Shogun on Hulu for the absent Bruce Leslie, Sweet Sean's It Goes X from the internet. I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.